Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Dangerous Rhetoric. This is episode 103. I'm Brent Lee.
I'm Dan.
And before we get started, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share the show with your friends. It really helps. And today we have...
You forgot to tell them to donate.
Oh, yes. Give us money, too, if you want to. That always helps. Today we have a very special guest, Mr. Buck Angel. Buck is a writer, filmmaker, and the star of entrepreneur, has many interesting items available on his website. And we're going to get into it today. Thank you so much, Buck, for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Right on, you guys. I appreciate you reaching out to me. I think we're going to have a really great conversation. So thank you.
You forgot Tranpa.
That's right.
Tranpa is how I think of Buck.
Yeah, so we've seen a couple of your appearances. I think you've been on Carrie Smith's show more than once, right?
Love Carrie.
Yeah, and we're friends with Carrie. We love her show. She likes to talk to a wide array of people. She's very open-minded. And, I guess one of the things we can chat about just right off the bat from that is this newfound, I guess, embrace from certain more conservative political commentators of someone like you and your voice in the current discussion of gender ideology and all of that stuff. And you're definitely not someone I would consider a conservative, but there's some common ground that's being found here in this fight to protect kids. So, when did that sort of start for you, this we'll call that a transition as well.
I mean, actually, it's kind of an interesting transition. I mean, I really consider myself a sort of a liberal thinker and a sort of, I think, classical liberal. That's what it's called. Just freedom of speech, freedom of ways of living, and all that kind of stuff. So I never thought that I would be kind of connecting with the conservative space, but I do on some level because of what I sort of speak about, which is most important. People need to understand here is that, I fight for the rights of kids not being transitioned, and I don't care what an adult does. So I think really my talking points in this whole trans space is adults can do what they want. Many are making mistakes, and that's a whole other conversation. But I think what happens is the conservative space and my space come together because we both care about the future of children. And so as an older transsexual who transitioned 30 years ago, I just cannot even believe we're doing what we're doing. Yeah. So that's the commonality that we sort of, of course, all my other work and everything else I do, it's not something they actually are okay with. But as you know, I'm a pornographer. And that being said, that's incredible that Fox News would have me on their channel. So I'm all for it.
Carrie,
yes.
Christian and all of that stuff. But she's a very open-minded person, and she likes to talk to, all types of people. And you don't always have to agree with someone's lifestyle to find sort of common ground with them.
Right.
But I know Brent wanted to take it back a little. We'll return to this for sure, but I think Brent wanted to go more into like your history.
Yeah. Where did you grow up? How old were you when you started to transition, and what were the sort of like feelings? What was the impetus for that, basically?
So I am 60, and I grew up in the San Fernando Valley in Los Angeles, California, in the 60s and 70s. And, I was a tomboy. I was 100% a tomboy, and we didn't talk about trans stuff back in the day. It was not even on anyone's lips. Like, thank God. I'll be honest with you, thank God. I had an awesome childhood, you guys. I did not suffer. I did not have anything of what these people are saying today. My parents are amazing, and they treated me like a boy. And, I got teased, of course. I was a girl being a boy, and that's normal. All of the stuff happened to me as normal stuff in it. But I would say in my sort of late teens, maybe going towards adulthood, puberty and those kind of things happen. And I'm just not understanding myself. I'm attracted to girls, and I'm a girl, but I want to be a man. And, you can't have these conversations. So I did struggle. I'll be honest. I struggled for many years of my life, all the way until my transition, which was 28. But with that, came drugs and alcohol and all kinds of stuff that, it's amazing that I'm still here today. And it's important for people to know that people like myself do struggle, but we have so much more help today. I just wasn't around when I was, but here I am. So I want people to know that here I am. I don't want to make my struggle this sort of like bad thing on some level. I want it to be sort of my journey to get to where I am today.
Yeah, you had a post that you put up last July, and it's a picture of you pre-transition, and you said, "This is me before I transitioned to live my life male, a biological female. This person lives inside of me. She helps me navigate the world. I do not hate her. I found peace with her, but it was impossible to live like this. I cry as I write this. Have some compassion, please."
Yep. Yep. Yeah, that's it. That's my story in a nutshell. And I was a fashion model, a female fashion model for many years in the early 80s when androgyny was sort of like this new upcoming thing.
Yeah.
So I've lived many lives, my friends, many lives.
Yeah, and we do have compassion. We've been accused of being transphobic and all this stuff because we have detransitioners on, because we don't actually believe someone can change their sex. You're making cosmetic and chemical alterations to yourself to appear as the other sex. That's what we're saying. But because we don't agree that trans men are men and trans women are women, we get labeled all of these things as if we're phobic, and it's not that. We definitely have compassion. We recognize that something like gender identity disorder, or what they now call gender dysphoria, it exists.
Yeah.
It's something that's probably incredibly difficult to deal with. I personally have no idea what that's like, but I would break bread with you any day. It's not a matter of a phobic thing. It's not. We need to be having these conversations because of what I brought up earlier. Yeah, it's harming people for sure with this general affirm approach with no pushback at all, not addressing that something else could be going on.
That's right.
And not addressing that people who are going through puberty all struggle with their identity, and most who have dysphoria will desist from that over time. That's right. Or given time,
Everything you said is the truth, and none of it is transphobic. And I'm telling you from an older transsexual person. And I have more lived experience than most of the people saying stuff out there to you. So whatever they say to you, who cares? They call me transphobic. That should just put a squash on that right there. You wouldn't have me on the show, first off, if you were transphobic. Secondly, I wouldn't be on your show if you were transphobic. And thirdly, because you highlight detransitioners, I do too. And the reason why me and you have that commonality is because we see things that other people aren't willing to have the conversation about. And I don't care what people think about me, and neither do you guys, because I think we have the commonality, which is to all of us to live healthy and peaceful, but without putting children into a space that is not for them. Who's going to take responsibility for that? That's my ultimate question. Who will take responsibility for these young people who we know they're all detransitioning now, are going to live with things that they should never be? Who's going to be responsible for that?
Yeah, and you mentioned something earlier too. Adults are also making decisions that are turning out to be mistakes that they're regretting. That's right. Part of that is, yes, it's a mistake, but I think also it has to do with the general affirm approach now, when the approach used to be watchful waiting. So there are adults who I think are also being harmed, and even though they're not minors, they are being harmed. Every detrans person we spoke to on our show, and we've had 4 on, transitioned after they were minors. 19. I think Richie was like 28. So Camille, I think, was around 9.
She was around, I want to say 22.
Actually, yeah, she was a little older. She was like 22. Laura Becker was 19.
She was 19.
And then we spoke to Shapeshifter, who I think was also
she was in her 20s,
around the 20s,
late 20s.
So this is not just affecting kids. It's affecting people. It's affecting men and women. And you'll have the radical feminist types who are trying to kind of paint the whole pushback against this as like a feminist movement, when it's not. It's harming boys as well.
That's right.
And this is like literally, we're just standing up for reality, like biological reality.
I mean, I am a biological female. I don't care what anybody says. You can deny all your biology all you want, but there's no point in me denying it, because that's the whole point. I mean, I feel like I'm talking like in a cartoon.
I mean, it erases your transition too by trying to say that that's not the case. It's like, then are you even someone who's quote unquote trans? Because the point of being trans is you are trying to appear as the other, and you take these steps to transition to that. But if you just erase biological reality, then it's like your experience isn't your experience anymore.
Then you're not trans. Be something else. Go over there and be something else. It's why I reclaim the word transsexual. Transsexual people are people who actually have a gender disorder, right? They have a gender dysphoria diagnosis. We get diagnosed from an actual real therapist, not this wing nutty stuff. And then we go through a medical transition to look like men and women. We are binary people who are biologically male or female and want to live in the other sort of sex space. It's real simple. You can look at me and probably hopefully see a dude, but that's the whole point. But why would I deny my biology? Because my biology also matters for my health. When I go to the doctor, I can't pretend like I have a penis and I was born male because I have female reproductive in my body.
They need to know that.
They need to know that. That's right.
And you do pass as a male. Like if I just saw you on the street, I would never have guessed that you were biological female. I wouldn't, You have great muscle tone and beard and
the beard. You can grow
the beard. All the dudes are always like, dude, your beard is better than mine.
I know men who can't grow beards, and you have a better beard than them.
I mean, it's funny. You see this? You see what we're doing here? We're having conversation. Yeah. We don't hate on each other. And it is kind of funny that I have a better beard than a biological dude. I mean, that's hilarious. I mean, it's just so dumb so I just want you to know that what I think is the younger generation, many of them are taking on this trans thing as an identity choice. This isn't my identity. This is an actual medical disorder that I have. And so that's the difference between a transsexual and this new age transgender movement. It's a movement. This wasn't a movement. This was a space that I needed to help myself move forward in the world. Now I'm in the world, right? Like that's the whole point. We want to fix our stuff, move back, and then be part of the world. And that's what I did.
Well, Sarah Higdon got temporarily suspended from Twitter for saying exactly what you just said, that
I know
that it was a mental disorder.
Yeah. And
it's weird.
It's still to this day kind of iffy if you talk about transsexuality in a context of being a mental illness. Twitter, people will still maliciously report, and you can have your account temporarily they'll knock you off, and if you appeal it, they'll let you back on. But there's a lot of work to do with Twitter.
Oh my gosh. Well, then there's that. But I've been very lucky on Twitter. I say that all the time. I say I'm a biological female. I have a mental disorder, and I never, people report the heck out of me. Twitter never takes it down. So I have
legacy verified.
Maybe that's why. I'm not really sure.
Well, Sarah has a smaller audience and is not as well known. You're fairly well known. You're one of, I would say, you're probably the first trans person to actually become notable and famous because you came out publicly about this stuff.
Yeah,
like you said, 30 years ago. Like you're way ahead of all of these.
Yet they hate me. They hate me and they call me transphobic. It's why I highlight it, because I want the world to see that what's ever happening with this younger generation, it's not right. You don't talk to people like me like that, and nobody in a community should ever speak to somebody like me like that. It doesn't matter if you like my opinions or not, but you don't come after me and tell me to kill myself and you're trans. Like, that just doesn't make any sense. So it's important for the world to see there's a lot of mental illness attached to this, by the way.
Yes.
A lot.
Which I think will lead into something Brent wanted to ask about in regards to trauma.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, I was just wondering, did you have a traumatic experience prior to transitioning? And do you think that impacted your decision to transition?
That's an excellent question, by the way. And so you got to remember how old I am. I'm 60, and I also transitioned 30 years ago. Back when I was going through all the things I was going through, I went to therapy. And I definitely had traumatic experiences in my life. I've had molestation things happen, as a young person. I've had sort of, being beat up as a young person. Even as a young lesbian, a young dyke, I got my ass kicked all the time by dudes in trucks. They would follow me and with baseball bats. I mean, I could go on, and I lived through the AIDS. I lived through the AIDS movement, and that really was very traumatic for me. I lost all my friends to AIDS. So I did have traumatic experiences in my life, but we never touched on it in my therapy, because you have to remember, my therapy wasn't trans focused because we didn't understand that. My therapy was more focused on my sexuality, because I was saying I was attracted to girls and I was a girl. And also my sort of, I had a lot of anger when I was a young person. So I would get into a lot of fights. And I think that my therapy was more focused on why I was such an angry young kid. But now we know why. I was kind of dealing with my dysphoria.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, I can relate to that for sure. I still deal with anger, but I'm better.
Yeah.
now than I used to.
Excellent. Me too. I was really bad. I was constantly getting into fights, and not until I transitioned. People have this idea about testosterone.
I was going to ask about that. I'm like, that didn't worsen that issue for you?
No, because it's a lie. Now, if you're going to shoot bodybuilder type testosterone, yeah, you're going to probably get roid rage, and these guys are shoving tons of. I take 1 cc of testosterone every week. It's nothing. But that being said, it calmed me down. So yeah, I was an angry dyke, you know what I mean? Like, I hate everybody. And then I started shooting testosterone. I was like, whew. It actually, people were like, what? Because I feel like my hormonal balance was off or something, and it just really calmed me down on so many levels.
Well, it does have an antidepressant effect.
Yeah, well, it gives you as well, makes you
That's right.
It makes you goal oriented, all those sorts of things.
Yep, it's true.
So that's very interesting, because that's why I also noticed that a lot of gay guys that I've spoken to in private conversations, they also have a trauma history, and that could either be a really domineering, controlling kind of psycho bitch mom, or it could have been a traumatic sexual experience. Like I know a lot of gay guys that were introduced to sex by severely older men at early ages. Like the one guy who I'm thinking of, it popped in my head, he was 12 and he was introduced to sex by a 35-year-old man.
Ugh, so, gross. Just gross. That's all I'm going to say on that. But that's very prevalent, and not only in the gay community. That there's all of that stuff also in the straight community, and I see a lot of we can use this word or not. I'll just say pedo. You can block it out, whatever. But that being said, okay, yeah, we see a lot more of it today. It's become much more prevalent and much more they're very bold. They're very emboldened and to just show themselves and to be so creepy and come here to your glitter family. Don't talk to your parents. Talk to me. I'm like, that is really actually weird, dude. Like, knock it off.
I feel like you're referencing a particular.
Yeah.
No, none of us like.
No, dude. We're after that guy. Creep.
Doesn't like you, though.
It's creepy. Everyone who knows.
So teethy. I saw one of his videos in here. Doing like this.
He looks hungry. And when he speaks, he just sounds hungry.
That's right. That's such a great analogy. He does. Yeah. He looks like that creepy, weirdo, hungry, I'm going to get you. Come into my private space. Now he has like a Patreon, a private space that me and you can have a private conversation.
This is the other thing. Like parents are not protecting their children.
They're failing at
predators
that,
like him. I've even seen parents actively engaging in the profiteering of images of their children. There's a whole investigative thing. I went down this deep rabbit hole of parents that are putting pictures up on Instagram, of their children in like bathing suits or like bath time. And then they use that as a lead into their Patreon where they have albums of these kids behind paywalls. Evil. And they're not, they're not, obvious pornography or obvious nudity, but it's close enough.
But why is it behind a paywall? That makes it pornography to me right there. Yeah. I don't care if it's just
it is.
It doesn't need to be nude pictures. I mean, these pedos like all kinds of shit.
Albums of the kids at the beach, of the kids at the pool, and it's always at the beach, at the pool.
Because they're in their bathing suit. It's so gross, you guys. And so now that's being attached to me and to our community, right? Yeah. That's the part that's upsetting me. It's like, hold on, wait a minute. People need to know that we are not okay with that. And if you are, then get the heck out of here, dude. I work in the pornography space, and that's always been a very difficult line for me to walk because I make adult products and stuff, and that's an adult space, and that's over here. But I fight for the kids. You know what I mean? It's a very difficult space because what I do is adult entertainment. Period. Done. There's no such thing. But we fight in our own community about these weirdos sort of latching on and creating these spaces. It's now that the internet is so huge, you guys, and now that there's so many outlets, that's just rampant. Yep. It's rampant.
I'm almost of the mind that we need a new sort of child digital rights act that says until you are 16 or older or whatever the age is, you cannot have images put on the internet of your child. Like, period, flat, just take it all the way. Like even the wholesome stuff, I'm not into it anymore, because now it's just like, where does that line between wholesome and cringe and exploitation? It's too many moms with their kids on TikTok.
Some might push back and find that authoritarian.
You know what? I don't care.
I don't care either. Look, I have a 10-year-old son. I'm a total dad. So that being said, I coach soccer and I referee, and I'm around all the kids all the time, right? Because I just like being that dad. But that being said, my kid isn't on the internet. He's like, Dad, I want TikTok. I go, sure you do. And I want $1 million. So it ain't happening, just so you know, kiddo. Here's an Oculus. Here's, you know what I mean? It's like, let's go to the rock climbing wall. So I personally, as a parent, don't understand. You know, I've never put pictures, and if I put 1 or 2 pictures of my kid, it's always with a thing over his face, and never would I ever expose my child to this insanity. And that's what I truly do not understand. Parents sort of exploiting your child on some level.
Yeah, you can tell a lot of time these parents on TikTok sort of like, there was this one video I saw with this woman and her child was not into it. And she was just like hurting him in front of the camera. And then she does one of these like silly, wacky dances and then the video ends. But clearly the kid did not want to be in the video.
No,
and
that's right.
It's like, lady, just stop.
Lady. No, but you want to know what else I have a huge problem with these trans kid parents. I have a huge problem with how they are sort of putting their children on the internet through their transition. And, you know, I always say, if your child is seriously really trans, which that's a whole other conversation, but if they really are suffering and dealing with gender dysphoria, the last place they want you to put them is on the internet. And the fact that you as a parent are exposing your child, look, your child isn't trans. They're either a boy or a girl. It's what I explained to you earlier. I didn't want to be trans. I wanted to be a man. That's why you got to see the difference between me and them. They want to identify as trans. They want their child to identify as trans. No, friend. Your child is not trans. Your child is either a boy or a girl, or has gender dysphoria and wants to be seen as a boy or a girl. Why are you exposing your child as trans? What if let's just say, what if at 20, they're like, I'm not trans. I'm actually a biological female and I want to live that way. And now you expose them all over the internet as, do you see the slippery slope there?
Yeah, it's not good. They're
not good at all.
Look at that stuff and be like, Mom, Dad, why the hell did you put that stuff all over the internet? Now
that's right.
We're also
probably increased.
It's inviting backlash too against,
that's right.
You know, gay people, against trans people. It's there already is sort of this idea that, you know, the community at large is to blame when it's actually just a very few, very vocal, ideologically driven individuals, mostly in the education thing. And a lot of times it's heterosexual women who are wannabes. They identify as queer, but not.
Way too much RuPaul's Drag Race.
Oh my God, you're so right.
Just like, stop.
I know, it's actually sick.
They're all women in their 20s.
I know.
They're not married.
They're trying to be hip, but I think some of them are just like pathological. They want to use it. It's like, I think friend Russell from
conservative Canadian.
Yeah, he changed his name, so I forgot.
The conservative Canadian.
But he mentioned he had a tweet about this months ago. But like, it's like to them, it's like a Prada bag or something. Like they're using the kid as an accessory because now it's hip, it's mainstream to be trans. And if you have your trans kid, you know you're going to get all of that attention that you perhaps didn't get because you didn't accomplish shit in your life. So now you could just, you know, display your kid everywhere and be like, look how great I am as a parent. I care so much. I'm affirming them.
Oh my gosh,
you get all these views and clicks.
And then those parents are like rabid animals. If you say they come after me, call me transphobic, I'm like, lady, I transitioned before probably you were born and your kid was born. So like, how dare you? And secondly, you have Munchausen. So get out of my face. And now you're on my list of parents who are transitioning their children because I have a list. And when this shit comes down, make sure I'm going to send people to your space because what you're doing to your child is disgusting child abuse.
Very famously, Jazz Jennings was a young boy who was transitioned to, to be a girl on television of all things. And it was, I believe, his mother even took him out of the country. I think they're based in the UK at the time. It wasn't allowed for the young men to get castrated.
Right.
And so she took him either, I think it was in the United States or I forget where. but she took him somewhere to get that surgery, before he was even 18. It was just like, oh.
Yeah, and then there are people still saying it's not happening to minors. It's not happening. It's not happening.
I have, if anyone needs it, I have tons of proof. I have actual photographs of parents with their 13-year-old kids. My kid got top surgery today. And I have tons of information. That's complete bullshit. They are doing that. And it is actually documented by the stupid parents
Keep
who are
that
putting
list.
Yeah, that's right. It's on the list, my friend. I have a list of doctors, all of them, all of these woke people who are destroying children's lives. Because it's so sad, you guys. I feel so sad.
It's already coming to a head, but it's
is
definitely going to come to a head even more.
There will probably. I feel like there will be a point, if we're not already there in the not too distant future, where there are more detransitioners than there are people who
100%
sexual.
Oh no, 100%. You guys,
y'all are very small. You're even less of the population than homosexuals.
That's right. And that's exactly right.
People forget, like, it's so weird. People think that there's 20% gays or it's 1 in 10. Not really. Like, there's like a lot more like of the heteroflexible guys out there that are bisexual, but for all intents and purposes, they're straight. And I count them as straight, for the most part.
Yeah, me too.
You had a gay experience, a couple of times, maybe. You're not gay.
You're not gay.
You're not totally straight either, though.
Yeah, sure, okay, but you're not gay.
You're not gay and you're not queer. Stop appropriating our labels. No, they're appropriating trans. They're appropriating queer. What you said earlier, there's a lot of straight girls who are queer now. I go, do you know that word? Do you even know the history of that word? And now you're just calling yourself queer? What?
Stop it.
Just stop it. We don't. Just stop it.
I was up in Burlington after Fred Sargent got beat up at that Pride celebration. We went out 2 weeks after that.
We had Fred on the show as well.
Oh, me too. Me too. He's amazing.
He's great. Yeah, definitely. He's like one of our treasures, like left over from that era, and an actual witness who can testify to what happened then and there, because they are in the process of rewriting the whole history of Stonewall, and now it's
they already did.
Trans women here, trans women there. I'm like, guys,
nope. Didn't happen. I mean, Fred was there. Fred was actually, like, literally, physically there.
Who they like to, claim was, through the first book or whatever. She didn't show up until later, and also she didn't go by she. She didn't identify as trans.
That's right.
She was a drag queen. She was a gay man who liked to present as a woman.
Did start to take estrogen though later in life before he died. So I mean, I think now perhaps if he were Buck's age, he would probably identify as transsexual, perhaps, but that really wasn't a thing yet back then.
That's right. That's right.
There was no real terms for this.
Also, we need to respect his own desire of how he identified, and the fact that they're literally changed. They're not doing it only with this stuff. They're doing it with all kinds of older people in the LGBT community, like gay women. They're butch gay women. They're now rewriting and saying that they're non-binary or they were trans. I'm like, how dare you? This woman fought for butch gay rights and did so many, and you're changing her whole identity because you think because she was masculine, that all of a sudden she was trans. I mean, I find that very insulting, and it's rewriting our history. And so, those people did not identify as transsexuals. They identified as transvestites. And that's a big difference there. And you can't we need to push back on this. And I do all the time, but I get called racist and I get called transphobic and I don't know, every turf, I don't even know, bigot.
All they have are insults in order to corral you.
That's right.
Because they can't have an honest conversation.
Nope. They hate discourse. They don't like it.
They hate it.
Like that.
They want to bully you into silence and then let everybody else know that, hey, if you talk like this person, this is what you're going to get.
Well, that's
true.
One of the reasons we started this podcast was we wanted to have these conversations and to show other people you can have these conversations.
That's right.
And even though other people might step in and call you this or that or cancel you or go for your job, because they will. A lot of them will. They'll call your job and try to get you fired. People are here and will stand with you and will support your right of free speech and to talk about these things openly.
Excellent.
It doesn't make you a bigot. It doesn't make you any of the things that they say you are. We're having discourse because discourse is important. That's how this country functions.
That's right.
And the talking stops, more fighting begins, and we don't want to see more fighting. So
that's right. That's why shows like yours are so important. Bringing together the people that people think we hate each other or that we can't have a bridge. I consider myself honestly a bridge builder. I'm not in any way, shape, or form. I don't want to be separate from the world. I want to be a part. That's the whole reason I transitioned, so I can hang out with you guys and have a beer and go places. And my sex or my biology has never ever come up my whole life on some level, except now in the last 10 years I have to keep saying I'm a biological female. I'm a biological, and it's like ridiculous. Like, come on, man. How many times do I have to say this? But the way they are representing, pardon me, the transgender community is wrong. And that's why I really value when guys like you bring me on shows, so that your listener base doesn't just see this one side of this story and know that there's many of us out here fighting on the other side, but our voices are not as big as some of these, activists or whatever you want to call them.
Because your voice goes against the narrative that the mainstream
That's right.
is trying to paint. And that narrative is that you're all oppressed, you're getting stalked and beat up and killed at large numbers. All of you are a monolith and you all think the same. And they say the same thing about gay folks. They say the same thing about black folks. If you're this type of minority, you have to vote this way. You have to think this way. And it's just...
That ridiculous. Is the actual bigoted, racist, homophobic, transmisogynist view.
That's right.
You start telling people that because you are A, you have to think like B. I mean, it's like, did you hear yourself? Like, and then they have the gall to project their racism by gaslighting and Darvo and all this stuff.
Oh, it's so gross. I was on a show, PragerU, and having a debate with a black trans woman, and she just right out the gates called me said I called somebody, a black person, a monkey. I was like, wait, stop the show right now. I go, you stop this show, fact check. And she was all like, and then I go, where, when, and how? And then, we got through that, but she kept throwing the race card at me. And then I'm like, I thought we were talking about trans issues here. Okay. Yes, I'm white. Yes, I have privilege, whatever you want to say, but come on, can we get back on track? Anyway, at the end of the show, we're leaving. And she says to me in the elevator, I'm sorry, Buck, for saying that about the monkey comment. I'm like, why didn't you say that when we were on camera? Yeah. Why are you telling me now? So no, not okay.
Yeah. I wanted to read a tweet by a mutual on Twitter. He said this tweet, and I thought it was really profound and true. He said terms like LGBTIQA and POC only make it harder to talk about life as a minority. It hurts us. It squashes us into boxes and takes our individuality away. A POC believes this. The LGBT community is offended by this. People talk for me constantly, usually straight people.
It's the same with white people complaining about, racism against the black community.
I know.
That's mostly, it's mostly white people.
That's right.
It's mostly young, liberal, white women.
It happens to our friend Adam Coleman all the time. They'll tweet something at him and just that he's not blacking correctly.
And they're white. I mean, it's unbelievable, you guys. I get totally that shit all the time from people who aren't even trans. Like, you're a transphobe. I go, are you trans? Calling me transphobe? You're not even trans. Are you out of your mind?
So, on this term trans, there is actually another question I wanted to ask you, which just came to me, but we asked this question to Sarah Higdon as well. And this was something that Billboard Chris brought up on our show. I don't know if you know Billboard Chris. He's
awesome. Of course.
Yeah, he's a good friend of ours.
Yeah, great.
And he basically states that unlike, being homosexual, gay, which is something that you just are, he says trans isn't something that you are or can identify as or whatever. Like, trans is a process, is something that you do, and that's kind of how he defined it. Like, what do you think about that statement? Do you agree with that?
Oh, well, like I told you earlier, 100%, because I have a diagnosis, a medical, I'm not want to be trans, right? I am not trans. I have a medical condition called transsexualism. So he's totally right on. And that's why I have a diagnosis. I have a whole system I went through, not to live as a trans person, to live as a man. So he's right on. That's the thing, is it's a medical condition. And now they've made it into an identity choice. So that's why this is so dangerous, because these young kids don't even, not just young kids, but people who are just identifying whimsically as trans without any diagnosis, without any kind of understanding of what that means. So that's what I think what he's getting at, and I 100% agree with him. And that's why we need to bring it back to a gender dysphoric, space where you go to a doctor and you get a diagnosis and you go through a whole system of. It's called a safety. For me, it's called a safe system. They call it gatekeeping. I call it safekeeping.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Here's a quote by Angel from our article that covered you on Fox, which is, we talked about earlier how it's funny, Fox is covering
It is.
And you said we do show that there is a lot of trauma not being addressed before going to medical, and why we are having a large population of detransitioners that the transgender community is trying to hide.
That's right.
Angel said, mental health needs to be the priority, not affirmation therapy, but actual therapy. And I think that is the crux of the matter here is, I mentioned earlier, is going back to this watchful waiting approach. When someone comes to you and says, hey, I'm struggling with this, I feel like I might, like I want to be the other sex or whatever. Let's get to the root of that. Is that actually what's going on? Is there something else going on? Maybe there's some abuse involved, maybe, and trying to figure that out before just putting them on this pathway of medicalization, which is hurting a lot of people right now.
Well, we didn't do that before. And I really always say, that's why I think I'm so solid in my, I've never looked back, never thought I made, first off, remember I was an older person when I did it. I started at 28, but I didn't start taking the medication until 30. But that being said, I had to do 2 years of living as Buck. My therapist, 2 years straight up every week when I would go to her, she goes, well, what does it mean to be a man? She would push back on me. So what does that mean? And I'm like, to this day, I don't know what that means to be a man. So I'm just like, if you can actually answer that question, then I would like to know. But that being said, so we had to actually go and be pushed against, and, until we had to live in the man clothes and walk the world and see how that fit, try the shoes on before you buy them, but you try the car before you buy it. And since when do you just get to say, I am? Look, I don't care about identity choices, right? However that is, that's not going to hurt anybody. You can literally go back to changing your identity, but you can't change medical procedures. And this idea that we keep lying about puberty blockers being reversible when we know damn well they're so damaging beyond belief, and also surgery. You tell me how this is ever going to be turned back except for getting fake boobs, and those aren't real boobs. So people, the fact that they lie in this community is why I'm so mad, because I never lied about who and what I am, and I don't need to lie. And so when we lie to people, they start to go, well, wait a minute, why are they lying to us? And then we bring kids into the picture. That's it. That's why everything just went haywire in this. And now trans laws are being passed, and people who actually need this stuff like myself are going to be sucked into this whole anti-trans stuff.
Yeah, they just passed in the Tennessee House a new bill outlawing medicalization for minors, and even just the politicians I heard. I was tuned in just to watch a little bit of the debate before they voted, and the Democrats that were arguing for amendments to the bill were not clear on the permanent parts of putting kids on puberty blockers, especially the way that they do it. It's like the way that they do the puberty blockers, there is no temporary. Yes, if you give a child a puberty blocker just once, they're given I think in 6-month doses.
That's
so
right.
If you do it once or twice, yes, the effects are temporary. But when you're doing it for years and then leading into cross-sex hormones, which is the treatment protocol as right now,
it's all experimental.
And then when you
it's 100% experimental. There's no
you block a child before Tanner stage 2. You get the 10 or 11-year-old, you take away their ability to have an orgasm.
There you go.
Yeah, and then when you bring that up, they accuse you of having pedo intentions or something. Why do you care about them having orgasms?
Why do we care? Because first off, orgasms, I mean, I know that's the slippery slope there, right? Now we can't talk about that. All of a sudden, no, I'm talking about it. First off, don't you dare take an orgasm away from a human being. Secondly, without that human being having some kind of say-so in that. Secondly, sterility. So you think a 10-year-old, you ask any 10-year-old, you want to have babies? They're going to be like, no, of course they're going to go like that, right?
Even 20-year-olds, even 22-year-olds.
That's right.
Lots of people, when they're younger, don't want kids, and then later on they change their mind.
My biological clock did not start ticking until I was 32.
Yeah,
right on.
29 is when I started to see my friends all having kids, and I'll be like, oh.
Well, of course, if I was a moody, anxious, depressed, and dysphoric teenager, and I would thought that this is the solution, that these negative emotions, these negative feelings would go away if I just did this process. Of course, I would opt to sacrifice my future reproductive potential for the return and some normalcy.
I know.
Yeah, it's
ridiculous.
experimental.
But it's like you said, they're lying to these children, and this is really what it comes down to.
They're
is
using
that
them as test subjects
there are
too.
people, there are people in the world that just they operate on lies. It's just lies come to them as easy as breathing does for us. And so, and a lot of them don't even realize they're lying when they do it. Like, I'm sure this Democratic politician I saw talking about, how the science was disputed on puberty blockers. I'm sure he had no clue he was actually lying. Well, maybe he did, but
maybe he did.
No, but shame on them. Shame on them. That's called due diligence. And you know what? And that's called you better go look at every site. So, that's why I look at everything. If people are like, why are you following so-and-so? Because I watch everyone. If I don't get all sides of the story and I don't see how and the people who hate me, I follow them because I want to see what they're saying. What is wrong with everybody? Like, if you're just looking at CNN, that's all you're ever going to get. And then you think puberty blockers are awesome and everyone's going to benefit for them. But if you go watch another show, like maybe even Fox, they're like so hard. Everyone's hard lined, right? There's no in the middle. I'm going to tell you that as much as I'm against transitioning children, the thing that I'm not against is letting a kid go through puberty. I'm against puberty blockers 110%. But later on, maybe at 17, 16, they're starting to feel like I just interviewed a young girl, 15, a young trans girl, and she transitioned at 15 after she went through 4 years of therapy and puberty. And she seems straight up right on, like so there's always an exception to the rule. I think that we must understand nothing is black and white. And one out of 1,000 kids might actually benefit from this, but we're still too early in on this, and we don't understand the long-term effects of a 16-year-old doing this.
Do you think that maybe because of that, and because it is only going to be like maybe one exception out of thousands who are being harmed, that there should be some kind of hard line legislatively, like just a cutoff period?
I do.
After 18, then it's like, all right, now you can make your own decisions, but we still don't just affirm. We push back. And I think... Oh, no, I'm totally on board with that, because now these wingnut trans kids, they made it so accessible. You can literally go on the internet to a website and order testosterone and under a 15-minute intake, and you get the testosterone mailed to your house. I'm like, wait a minute here. What? Like, can you imagine? And I'm like, well, I remember the day where I had to go, like, literally to the doctor, to, like, the pharmacist wouldn't give me it. The pharmacist was like, what do you need this for? I'm like, what? It's my doctor. Give me my medicine. He's like, but what do you need it for? And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, dude, you don't get to know my personal space. Yeah. He wouldn't give me my testosterone. Because I was a woman.
Right. Versus today, where it's just like you walk into Planned Parenthood and you have a prescription.
Literally, dude. Literally, you go on an app and you're like, yeah, I'm trans. All you have to say is you're trans. Yeah. That's why affirmation therapy is a joke. It's an actual joke. It's all connected to medical. I'm going to tell you, I might sound like a conspiracy weirdo, but it's all connected to money. And pharmaceutical companies are disgusting and evil, and they're just
being made.
Yep. That's right.
And then also once they get that kid blocked, it's like, it's a whole process of all they're seeing is the dollar signs,
that's
ringing
right.
in. Yeah, well, and even if the child decides to detransition at some point, they're still going to need
Exactly. It's a win-win. It's a literal win-win for them at the expense of a young person's life, where you're now putting them. I mean, all the detransitioners you guys, did interviews with, they probably all, I noticed that they all sort of have the same kind of intersection there, which is that they didn't get any therapy. They got affirmed as trans and sent to, here's your script. Go to YouTube and figure out how to shoot it. Like, one kid told me that they tell you to go to YouTube and learn how to inject the needle.
It wouldn't even show. Wow.
What the heck world do we live in?
It's crazy. I still can't believe this shit is happening.
I mean, either. Every day, I'm a transsexual, and I'm just like, this is not happening.
It's probably even more shocking for you too, because again, like this, you did this process a long time ago, and you probably never would have imagined that the world would be in the place that it's in right now. That not only is it like accepted, it's almost like
encouraged.
It's encouraged. Great word.
It's just
great word.
Something that we don't want to encourage this. It
should be the last. Look at it. Should be the last thing you do after you do X, Y, and Z. If X, Y, and Z are not working, that's the last part of the equation there. But if you're not, look, I'm telling you, it's the most amazing thing that ever happened to me at 30. But the thing is this, I don't want anybody to be trans. This is not a life of beauty. I have to shoot testosterone. I have to do all kinds of things. My health isn't great because of it. I'm probably not going to live to be, 80, whatever that means.
Ask about that stuff.
Yeah.
The life expectancy.
That's right. We don't know because I'm one of the oldest trannies on the block. So they don't even know even what that even means. Right. And I made it to 60.
In a tweet you made in 2020, you called yourself an experiment, and
that's
you,
right.
You addressed people who keep calling me transphobic and TERF. Remember, I transitioned without any community, no safety net, no TikTok, no privilege, nothing except me and my willingness to be an experiment. And then you said I have balls of steel, which I thought was funny. Remember that when you attack, I am not playing.
I don't play. I don't play. No. Do not come after me.
Even though you're not a biological male, that is in very many ways what it means to be a man right there.
Right on.
It's standing up, it's protecting, it's defending people who need to be defended. And right now that's the kids. We need to defend them.
And the women. And the women.
Technically, you're not a male. You are very much channeling what I would consider manly attributes and masculine.
Thank you, friend.
Energy.
Thank you.
Because we need more of that right now.
Yes.
We need that manly energy to say enough of this shit.
Like what? Who said this is? Oh, and that's the thing, my friend. I'm fighting for trans rights. If people think I'm not, I am. I'm actually fighting for the rights of transsexual people who need their medicine. And because of me and because of what I have done, I'm able to do that to show the world there are actual people like me who really do need this medicine and really do need to transition. But that being said, you got to give people time to figure this out. It's a lifelong thing. And so just because a kid wants to wear pants or wants to paint their fingernails now, and those are gender non-conforming kids. All of a sudden now you can't have a gender non-conforming kid. They're either male or female. And also, what if these kids are gay, right?
Yeah,
what if?
That's one of the things that makes this issue, I guess, close to heart for Brent and I is, me, not personally, when I was younger, I didn't put dresses on. Leave those femboys alone. I didn't put dresses on. I didn't want to wear heels. I actually had no interest in girly things when I was young, even though I am gay. But I have many friends who are like that. They are more naturally effeminate. And we have other friends who, when they were younger, were very much like that. And have said to me, like, if I was growing up today, I probably would have opted to have been transitioned because I would have wanted to have been a girl instead. But at the time they went through puberty and stuff. So it's like what we're living through is like a literal form of like conversion therapy.
Totally. I totally agree with you, 100%. Because how does a child know who they are? Come on. I mean, with sexuality, I'm going to tell you, I find it to be a little different than transsexualism. I do think on some level, I mean, and with transsexualism, you feel like a boy or a girl. So on some level, you do know that since you're a little kid. And sexuality is kind of the same thing. You start to be attracted to the same people maybe when you're younger. Some people might grow out of it. Some people might really just be into it. So to take that away from a child and let them have these experiences till they find themselves down the road is so gross. And on some level, it is conversion therapy. All of a sudden now we can't do that to trans people, but we can do it to gay people. Yeah. Like, none of it makes sense, you guys. And I'm actually sort of speechless on some level as to how we even got here. And now all of a sudden, why gay is like this, things are so homophobic out there. It's scary.
Yeah, well, it looks like we had a couple of Marxists basically hijack most of the medical boards.
Yes.
And the advice changed. Dr. Kenneth Zucker was the leading expert in childhood, kids with gender changes in Toronto. And they fired him because he was not willing to switch to this new affirm everyone approach.
That's right.
And because in his experience, it was something like, almost 90% of the kids that he treated of both sexes would desist naturally over time. And most of them became, homosexuals.
Yeah.
And so they fired him, and then he sued, and he was able to win that in court. So basically it all kind of piddled out in the end. But at the time he was, considered transphobic and all this nonsense when he himself had aided the transition of hundreds of individuals that, actually really needed it.
Me, because of him, he's a friend. He's a great human. He cares about us. And so that's also what the world needs to see because of being sort of put into an academic space. I don't think the rest of the world necessarily sees what's going on there. And academia is a big, huge part of the problem here, for sure. Because academic space is very elitist, and and they're very much this thing that they know better than everybody else.
Exactly.
And that's been a huge problem for me. Is that all of this is queer theory and all this nonsense? I go, do you people understand the word theory? You're in college and you don't have theory. Is not fact. It's theory. And I'm just like, I didn't even graduate high school, dude. So I'm like, these people are fucking insanely stupid. So
and yet they have all this education. Like, what is it for? Like, what value does it bring?
I know what it's doing. It's literally putting these kids into a one thought space. It's getting these kids. It's building an army. A lot of this stuff is because of the younger generation being fed all of this Marxist, communist, all this stuff that says that we're all bad because we're capitalists. I'm a capitalist, dude. Go. Fuck off, really, basically. I like it. Of course, there's bad parts of it, but I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have my own businesses. I wouldn't have been able to do what I do if it wasn't for capitalism. And if you don't like it, move somewhere else. But most of us actually like the opportunity to create for ourselves.
Yeah, and actually, at all the countries in the world, this is the one that sort of offers the most freedom for the most people most of the time.
That's right.
So you can criticize it all you want. Could it be better? Yes, but it
yes,
a lot worse. And we can see examples of a lot worse if we just North Korea and China, or if we just look to what's going on in Central Africa. I mean,
that's right.
It could be a lot worse.
Oh my God. But they don't have, I really feel like there's this entitlement. There's an entitlement with the younger people that they don't, they think they're suffering. They've been given this idea that we're suffering and we're marginalized and we don't have anything. Yeah, I'm like, dude, you're in university that costs $50,000 a year and your mommy is paying for that, and you literally have to do no job, or you're crying because you're at Starbucks and there's a line and you can't handle it. Like, I'm like, oh my God.
You have to work an 8-hour shift. Like, Lord, do you know what life was like? Not even 100 years ago, like 50 years ago, or 60 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, there were serious problems. Like, people in the 80s were dying from AIDS, and they didn't know what it was, and it almost wiped out, almost all of our gay mentors and our gay elders.
That's right.
And then these young kids just have no. I mean, I'm 40, and I feel like the young, especially, they have no appreciation for their elders, and it's so important in a culture to look to your elders to get the wisdom, because they've had the decades of experience, they've made all the mistakes, they've got stories that you wouldn't imagine, and so it's very important to have those intergenerational conversations.
Thank you.
That's why I've always been very close with my grandmother. She's 82 now.
Oh, right on.
Best friends. I need to call her, actually. I've been
yeah, you do.
with her in too long. It's been like a month or whatever, so I gotta go call her and have a conversation. But I always appreciated her perspective, just growing up in the 50s. She was born in 1940, so World War II was still going on.
Wow.
She came of age in the 50s and remembers having to go under the desks during bomb raid tests and all that stuff. Yeah, during the Cold War. So she's seen the world change so much. And I remember not that long ago, a few months ago, this was last year, I was on the phone with her, talking to her, and I was trying to explain the trans phenomenon to her. She was very oblivious of, and it was very difficult for her to wrap her head around this, but she had no idea that this was happening, and that so many young folks were getting pulled into doing these irreversible things.
Most people don't know.
That's right.
I've gone out with Billboard Chris a couple of times, and I would say 90% of the conversations, that people they don't know what's happening. They have no idea. And he tells them, and they're just like, "Wait, what? No, that can't be. You've got to be."
That's right.
And it's funny to watch him educate them, and then to see them be like, "This is not okay."
Yeah, that guy's a badass. All right, I'm going to switch gears a bit here.
Switch.
And one of the subjects we wanted to talk to you about, because I feel like a lot of people who bring you on their show avoid talking about it, and that's the subject of pornography. We had a discussion about that on our show before, and I guess I wanted to kind of go into your perspective on it, and maybe we can give our perspectives of it as well.
Right.
But I guess the first question I will ask is, overall, do you think pornography is something that's healthy? Is it good for society, or is it something that should kind of remain a more marginalized thing? I know you mentioned earlier that that's an adult thing for adult spaces. And maybe some of this erosion of that boundary that we're seeing now is that overly sexualization of our culture.
Yes.
So what do you think about that?
You know, it's a great question, and of course, I'm going to give a very nuanced answer because for me, it's a very nuanced space. Now, that being said, I got into the pornography business 21 years ago when the internet was kind of just at its sort of beginnings. So I worked in the adult space of DVD, VHS, all of that kind of stuff, which was a different era because we had a control over it, right? Kids can't just walk into an adult store and buy a video. Kids can't get access to things that they can today. So that being said, that's very important part of what I'm going to begin to say now. As that happened, I started to see the internet come into play, and the internet ruined everything on not just pornography, but everything. So what happened was people started taking movies and ripping them off and putting them all over the internet for free. So you could go onto any space with no block. Any kid could literally punch in whatever they wanted, blowjob, let's just say. If there it is, where it is. And then they started doing these spamming. Remember spam in the fucking like maybe in the 90s when they were doing porn spam and everyone was getting. So I saw my industry change as well as this accessibility to things that should never be accessible to young people. So then I had to sort of change my own, because I'm very pro-sex. I believe it actually helps me become very sort of grounded in my own body, because for people who don't know, I didn't have penis surgery, so I still have my vagina. And it was very difficult for me to sort of understand that in a sexualized space. Pornography helped me, and it also helped a lot of other trans men. My porn really focused on trans male sexuality, and so then this idea of the internet came, and everyone just started putting stuff up on the internet, and then OnlyFans, and then and then it just became the Wild West again. Because back in the 70s, it was the Wild West, which means that we have nasty, gross stuff happening in porn. Then we created laws around that. Then we had 2257s, and we really got really hardcore in our own industry. We really policed ourselves. But today we don't police ourselves because it's not the same space, and it's not studios, right? It used to be studios like, you know, like Titan Men and all that, right?
Yeah.
Not today. Anyone can do it, put it up. So it's a free for all. So how I feel about pornography is I do feel it is an important medium, because it's a medium, it's a film medium, but
it's around since ancient times.
Forever. But it's an adult space, and only adults should be accessing that. The problem is today we don't have that ability to sort of put it in a space where only adults can see it. So now, it's difficult for me because I don't like what's happening in any way, shape, or way. And I'm not necessarily a pornographer anymore, right? I create products. I create sex toys and products that help people sort of move in their own personal space. So I'm glad I'm not in the film business anymore, because I don't think it's good. And I do think people misuse it. And I do think some people get a hold of it, especially young people. I'm seeing it all over TikTok. They're sexualized. These are 16-year-old kids doing this stuff. It's not okay. Now, when we were 16, we were sexual. And you have that. You come into it and all of that. But are you seeing the things you're seeing today? No.
Yeah.
And that could be very damaging.
That's for sure.
That's for sure. And some of the stuff you see, and then the furry, the furry stuff came out of the sort of BDSM space. It did. I remember I used to go to furry conventions just because I thought it was hilarious. But now, it's like that got into the kids, and I'm like, do people even understand where this like sort of came from? And all of it feels very sexualized to me, and I think. It's difficult for me because I do believe in pornography as a positive thing, but I see it being used and I think it could probably use alcohol or things in the same manner, right? So it's like alcohol is.
I was going to bring up addiction, and talking about kids, but also in regards to adults and porn addictions. Like, what do you think about that? Because I've struggled a bit with that. I wouldn't say I have an addiction, but I think indulging too much in that medium isn't good. Right. I didn't find it healthy for me. I found it was something you would turn to when you were lonely or going through your own issues. But instead of addressing your issues, like turning to the bottle or turning to weed or all those other things, it's something you're using to cope instead of actually dealing with the issue itself.
There you go.
And, a lot of adults are actually struggling with full-blown porn addiction. And
that's true.
What do we do about that? Because I know there are people who don't even think that that's a thing, or they view it as a laughable issue, a non-issue, because they're like, oh, well, porn's normal. Everyone watches porn. You can't have that. But, I've been on forums. I've read testimony from people on Twitter and who have really struggled with
Yes,
it.
I agree. It's too accessible. That's the problem. So right, it's too accessible. You can't just go in any store and buy alcohol. You can't. So how do we now, and we have these conversations in my own community all the time. I go to a lot of conferences. We have a thing called the Free Speech Coalition. We all really want to lock this down. Don't think we're okay with what's happening. We're not. But we're all trying to figure out how to make it accessible to the people who need to see it or want to see it, and the people who should not be seeing it. Now, that being said, you're right. Addiction, I'm 30 years sober from alcohol and drugs and all of that stuff, but I use cannabis now. I'm California sober. So
I've heard that term before, California sober.
I'm California sober, dude. You know what I mean? Like, I used to be a drinker. I was gnarly. But anyway, so I think we're all sort of struggling with this. And I don't think the answer is to just literally make porn illegal, because then you're going to cause bigger problems. You're going to cause underground stuff to happen. That's right. And that's with anything. I believe the same with drugs and all of that kind of stuff. So how do we, as a community that care that you have access to this, and also, is it our fault? And this is a hard thing to say. Is it our fault that you struggle with your porn addiction? Or is it something we need to start to have a conversation about? And how can we help you? Because that means you have an addictive personality. And I have a very addictive personality. So, and I'm aware of it. And I know when I'm doing too much coffee, I'm like, okay, I'm taking a break on that, because I know how to so we need to teach people these tools. And why are you using porn? What's going on with you? Why are we not sort of addressing what's actually the underlying issue with your porn addiction? Because there's an underlying issue there.
There always is.
There always is. That's right. That's right. You can't blame it on porn. You have to sort of understand why this person is addicted to the pornography and what is happening in these spaces, that they're using porn to sort of just escape. They're using it to escape on some level.
And also, porn is not a great introduction to sex.
Yeah,
That's right.
It's not realistic.
That's right. That's right.
Also, you're seeing professionals perform in a professional manner.
That's right.
It's not. You're not seeing what would be a private, awkward moment between two teenagers sort of fumbling with each other.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the times it especially gives young men the wrong impression, especially heterosexual porn, because it's nowhere near reality.
Nope.
And it's the same for a lot of gay porn too. It's just like, it's not, it's just not as fancy or as visually appealing, or the activity isn't as vigorous as it may appear on the screen, because you just can't jump into those kind of things.
It gives an unrealistic perception of what actual sex is.
I do think that the responsibility really is with the parents, and because the parents control whether or not the child has a cell phone with internet access, or whether or not they have a pad with Wi-Fi in their room or computer in their room. Like, I'm a big fan of wired internet access and regular kids.
Excellent.
Like, as soon as when they're adults, when they can pay for their own stuff. But if you're dependent upon the parent system for internet access, then you do have a sort of control. You can sort of moderate, and we've sort of been very hesitant as a culture to regulate that or encourage parents to regulate that. And we have seen that there are parents, especially parents that have tech jobs, that do clock that shit down.
They know
because they know exactly. We should have this sort of wider, I don't know, like educational moment. Like, this is something that teachers would theoretically impart to children, that they shouldn't be on the internet, but they're actually doing the opposite. They're encouraging them to read pornographic books. And
I know, it's shocking. Actually, I'm totally against that. And I'm somebody who clearly thinks sex is important and talk about it. But how can you start talking to kids like that? They're so innocent. I have little talks with my son. He asks me only if he asks me, right? And it's so cute and innocent, and it's so awesome. It's like, so what's going to happen with this when I go through puberty? I'm like, oh, wow, some interesting things are going to happen to you. But it's so cute and innocent, and like, we don't make it dirty here in our house. We make nothing dirty. If he wants to even run around naked, it's all okay. He's like, why can't we be naked in the world? I'm like, because people are stupid. Like, it's okay to be naked, dude. It's like, your body's awesome and everything is, so I think parents do need to take responsibility for these things. And I think if you don't shame certain things, then you don't grow up with this shame around it, right? Like, we don't shame we're not talking about sex to our 10-year-old, but we just have this sort of more open space, and we understand that he shouldn't be seeing these things on the internet. And he does have a lock, by the way, on his internet, but he's so good, he would never do it. I just know that he wouldn't do it because I think that we're so open with him and we're honest about things. And I think that also is really important for kids.
Well, it's the parents'
also actively parenting. I think a lot
That's
of
right.
don't actively parent.
Well,
they just
probably
sort of
why the kids are turning to teachers.
Right. They just give them, they give them a
That's
pad,
right.
and then the parent is off. Like I've been a professional nanny and tutor in the past, like ever since I left my lab job, and I found it really rewarding. But a lot of the times, I see the situation where the parent is busy. The parent has a career. Parent has activities that you're interested in. Parents also might be struggling with addiction, and so they can't give the child the full attention that they need. And so they they'll give the child entertainment, they'll give the child video games, they'll give the child like cell phone, whatever the child wants. They just sort of okay, here, but you got to do this for me. It's a lot of transactional kind of thing, and it's like the worst possible thing. Like your child just really wants you to spend time and listen to them.
Totally, dude. Oh my God, you hit it right on the head. Like, come on, take your kid to the beach, go to the park with them, walk the dog, like spend. I don't get it. I think because there's so much going on. Everything is so about the internet these days. It's like, blah, that's why it's so gross. And like, get off the internet, people. Yeah. Like, there's an amazing world out there, and like, there's so many. And like,
fasting a bit on from social media.
It's so gross, you guys.
I'm doing it like a little bit during the day, and just.
That's right. That's right. I do my 3 or 4 posts, and I'm done, and I'm like, move on to something else. You know what I mean? It's just.
It's addicting. I think,
It's addicting.
Addictions, and it's like.
That's right.
Social media is one of the most addicting things.
It's gross.
And then we had this whole period that we went through, for several years.
That's right.
We were forced into our homes and businesses were closed, and that only made the problem worse.
And that's when a bunch of people became trans. That's when all these kids were like, "I'm trans." I'm like, "Oh my God."
Talk about trauma. I mean, you could argue that event, like keeping kids out of school, that's traumatic.
Traumatic.
So, another thing I wanted to talk about in regards to the pornography subject is, I guess, the moral implications of it, because me personally, I'm someone where I know not everyone views it this way, but I view sex as something that's like sacred. It's a special thing between people and bonding. And do you think porn waters that down, or do you think it encourages a more just animalistic, carnal way of looking at sex?
That's a great question. But, here's the deal, what I'm going to say about morals, right? My morals might be different than your morals. So that's the hard part about that, is that I have different morals. Doesn't mean yours are wrong or right or mine aren't. So that being said, that's the point that people seem to keep missing about pornography. It is entertainment. It is adult entertainment. It's a fantasy. It's a place where you can go and see something that you might never, ever see or might never, ever experience, but you're turned on by licking feet. So you get to see this licking feet thing that you'll probably never get to see anywhere else, and it's a big, huge turn on for you. So, and also, I have to say, people have shame around their fetishes or their things, and I think on some level, porn gives people permission to lick feet, even though me and you are like, whatever. I mean, I like boots, so you know what I mean. So there's that, but then you're right. So I always say this about pornography: it is fantasy, it is entertainment. It is not supposed to be about having an intimate relationship with somebody. That's an emotional space, and I do think that intimacy and emotional sex and all that is very important. But I think of it as a different space than. And if you're watching pornography for intimacy, then you're in the wrong space, and you shouldn't be doing that.
Yes, pornography is not a romance.
That's right. It's literally go in, do your business for 5 minutes or whatever, how long it takes.
Romance and your novels do have somewhat pornographic scenes in them. Yeah.
That's true. But that's different again, because you're using your mind and you're sort of reading. Yeah, totally. It's totally different. But with a video, you can pretty much today punch in anything, clown porn, and it's there, and you get to see a bunch of clowns having sex.
Oh my God. Clown porn.
It's kind of, it's almost scary, the amount of variety and just the sheer volume of pornographic content that's available.
Crazy.
It's so
crazy.
much.
It is so much, but it's a hard conversation. I appreciate you guys talking about it because people are very hard lined on it, right? They're very much like, this is why I sort of kind of have to keep mine over here or else I wouldn't be able to do the work I'm doing on Twitter and all these other spaces, even though people are like, you're just a pornographer, get out of here, you freak. I'm just like, really, dude? You're just not listening to me. So that's my business over here, right? Yeah. You're a milkman.
I wanted to understand your perspective more on it as someone who
Thank you.
Has experience in that, and even though we might not agree
that's right
is about it, the point is to have the discourse. Also, our show is Dangerous Rhetoric, so dangerous things, right? Things that are considered taboo or that other people are uncomfortable talking about, we want to go there. That's right. The point of the show as well.
And don't
I wanted to bring up also Rule 34. I don't know if you heard of Rule 34. Yeah, so this is something that came up on, I think, 4chan, which was an internet forum.
Right.
Basically, Rule 34 is an internet meme which claims that internet pornography exists concerning every conceivable topic. So basically, if it exists, there's porn of it. That's Rule 34.
Possible.
So like grinder porn or like mouse porn or like, like if in the world of porn.
Well, I'm going to push back a little because
that is, but it's a meme. It's a joke.
It's kind of a joke, and it's probably almost 100%. I mean, when I started, there was nobody like me. I was the very first. My claim to fame. My mom's so happy. But that being said, I was that first dude who sort of introduced the world to a naked body like mine, who no one had ever seen it before. So, and for me, my point in the beginning was, on some level, it was activism in this way because it never existed before I did it. I sort of, on some level, created this genre, and it was weird because people just they were like, "What? Why would you cut your penis off and put a vagina on?" And I'm like, actually, no, actually, I'm a biological female, and it was kind of entertaining and educational on the same space. So that being said, 20 years ago I didn't exist, and now I'm all over. There's all kinds of people doing what I did, but I don't necessarily know if there's everything, but there's close to it in the porn space. But remember, it's all about making money. It's a lucrative business.
But can I ask you, there's a new terminology that I've seen flitting around mostly in like the gender critical space. They're using the phrase trans-identified male and trans-identified female. So you'd be keeping your biological sex and just putting like trans-identified in front of it. So instead of being a trans man, you would be a trans-identified female. Like, how do you feel about that lingo?
Well, there you go. Stay over there, people. I have nothing to do with that shit. Like, I had a sex change, quote unquote, right? For lack of a better, what we used to call in the day, sex change. So I'm not a trans-identified anything. I'm a person who has a disorder called gender dysphoria, who transitioned, it's called transsexualism, transitioned to be a man. That's why I don't put my pronouns or any of that kind of nonsense, because so those people are on some level, again, appropriating. I feel like it's an appropriation of a disorder, and they're kind of making it into anyone can be trans. Yeah. Well, okay, anyone can over there, but over here you can't. Yeah, stay over there underneath your trans umbrella that keeps getting bigger, and anyone and ever now there's trans animals. I'm just like, what? Or there's trans? Oh my God, you guys,
what?
Trans animals. There's also pediatrics trans. Can you even get your head around that? The fact that there's gender affirming care, pediatrics gender affirming care. I'm like, you people are insane. Those two words should never even be put in the same.
Totally nuts. Yeah.
Nuts.
Yeah, like nuts. We were saying before, this stuff's going to come to a head, and
it is.
It's going to create backlash against people like us.
Now we've got
That's right.
States. We have some states going, the route of Tennessee and Utah, where they're outlawing it for minors.
That's right.
And then you have the opposite, where you have like California and now Vermont, which is the most recent, that are passing these like trans sanctuary laws, where basically, if you, the short of it is, if you are having, a divorce disagreement with your wife and she wants to transition your son or your daughter, she can abscond with the child to Vermont or California.
Crazy.
And the state will automatically side with her. Nothing else, taken into account, nothing. And this is what's happening.
It's even crazier. Like,
Vermont's even crazier because you can sue them back if they sue you to stop. Yeah. So if mom absconds with little Johnny to Vermont and wants to transition little Johnny. And dad is in Texas, their home state, and he sues in Texas, to stop the transition. She now has a right under Vermont state law to countersue him for what they created a new class of litigation called abusive legislation. And this is the first time that they can, she has grounds under Vermont to sue him for him suing. It's crazy, and it's very unconstitutional.
100%. I live in California, and I'm disgusted.
It's just cuckoo bananas town. And Jeffrey Younger, he's kind of in this situation. His wife absconded with the twin boys, and one of the boys, she's trying to transition, and he no longer has any parental rights. They took all his parental rights away. And I've watched him, he's gotten very radicalized because of this, and it's very sad to see. When somebody goes through a personal situation like that, when the state helps your crazy bitch ex-wife transition child against your will, that's your child. That's the flesh of your bone.
Right. And there we go with the state now. The state is jumping into my personal business. Are you insane? You don't touch my kid. I will gnaw your legs and arms off if you come near my child. So that's the thing that's so gross, you guys. And as a parent, I'm disgusted that we're passing these types of laws. I talk to a lot of parents. They contact me constantly. Help me. My kid says they're trans and they're 12. I'm like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, totally. Every day. I just dealt with a person now, and I deal with a lot of cool organizations. So I'm literally have these great organizations to send them to help them. But I'm helping this one woman get her child back. The same story, almost the exact same story. But the courts are keep ruling against her, which is so shocking to me. And now her child, who was 13 doing this, is now 15 saying, oh no, never mind, I'm actually a girl. And the mom's like, I told you. Yeah. And you guys, it's so shocking that we have kids. That if kids were never in this, who cares? Like, whatever. But kids, you guys we're talking about children who are going to be so insane when they get older, and they're going to be like, mark my words, you all know it. It's just going to become something so like, what did we do to these children?
Well, it's like you said earlier, it feels like they're trying to create a divide between the generations, that they want this army of young sort of neo-communists that wrapped up in this critical race and this critical gender ideology that are so, segregated that they literally, could be deployed as foot soldiers, that they would be willing to use violence against the older generations. And this is what happened in China. And the Chinese immigrants are now all being like, hey, this is a big warning. Yeah. This is a big warning.
That's right. That's right. Is that called the 4 or 5 olds? Was what that's right. It's called the 4 olds. That's right. That's right.
I can't remember.
They're doing the exact same thing here. That's exactly what they're doing, and it's so sick that people. But here's what they're doing, and any of these kind of weird culty organizations, they always get the kids. They always get the young generation because they're fearful. Look at all the trans rights or human rights. These little kids are like they're like maniacs. They're literally like.
Old culture, old customs.
Yep, that's it. The 4.
Right.
Yep,
yeah, and they're performing struggle sessions in our country now, except the struggle sessions are now mostly being performed digitally. That's where a lot of that happens is you get digitally dogpiled on, or you have your job contacted by a whole ton of people saying you need to get rid of this person because they tweeted this or whatever. And that's happening to a lot of people. And then the job or the employer will fire the employer, distance himself from them because they don't want to be wrapped up or tied to someone who's perceived as being transphobic or the way that they're being labeled by this mob.
No, it's so crazy. You know that they have something now called sensitivity readers, I think it's called. And they're starting to go through all the books, you guys, all the books, Dr. Seuss, everyone, and taking out language that feels offensive. I was telling my kid, and he's like, Dad, that's like putting clothes on a naked statue. I go, that's exactly right. You got it.
Yeah, imagine we started covering up David.
Dude, sensitivity readers.
They're supposed to be the liberal ones too. Which is
I know. Oh wow.
They're accusing us of banning books because we don't want sexual material in public school libraries.
Oh my God,
that's not banning books. That was always a rule that you didn't have.
That was a rule.
Material in schools. It wasn't.
That's right.
Books.
That was a
We're
rule.
Not banning them. You could go buy the book somewhere else. Just
it was
not
funny.
Have it in schools.
I read a story this week about a lawsuit that was finally got through the courts, and it went through all the appeals, and they eventually settled it in favor of the parents. And the parents had originally gotten kicked out of school board meetings because they were reading from the books that were in the library. And the school was like, no, you can't read that here. Our policies are such that you can't read that indecent thing here. And they're like, this is in your school. My child can get this book out of the library. I sure as hell can read it here. This woman was kicked out. And she got, I think it was Mama Bears was the group in Georgia, I want to say. They sued and they settled, and eventually she was allowed to speak. She was allowed to read the books. Awesome. And they basically had to admit that, oops, we were wrong, because it was a First Amendment issue. Because when you go as a parent to talk to a school board, you're complaining about something you're complaining to your government representative. You have a right to do that.
Yes. You have a right to do that. They're trying to take away our rights. Yes. It's so crazy, you guys. Like, I have the freedom. Don't you ever tell me not to say that. I will say whatever the fuck I want to say. I live in the United. I lived in Mexico for 10 years. Okay, and it's like real shit goes down there. I'm like, go live somewhere else and then come back, and you tell me to shut up.
Exactly.
Like, how dare you? Yeah, how dare you? I'm an American citizen, and I'll say whatever I want to say. And pregnant men don't exist, and trans women don't get their period. So move over.
If you're bleeding from your neo-vagina, you should probably
dude, this is where we are. They're literally here.
The last thing I guess I wanted to ask Buck about is, before we started filming, you mentioned that you're working on a book right now. I guess a memoir or a biography, perhaps. Tell us a bit about it. How far along are you? When do you expect that to come out?
Gosh, I've been doing this book for 5 years, but
that's okay.
Thank you.
It'll take a while to write.
Dude, I'm not a writer. I'm a speaker. So two different places, right? Yeah. But that being said, I really always believe that timing is everything. Mm-hmm. And so I think if 5 years ago, if I would have released my book, it would never be what it is going to be now. And I think it's the reason why the universe said, hold on, dude, you're just not ready here. So I found an amazing person to help me finish my book, and we're doing it right now. We're hopefully going to be able to get it out by this year, hopefully probably near the fall. But I just want you all to know that I've had a lot of pushback by publishers, of course, because I'm saying things that don't resonate with this new trans space. So a lot of publishers are like, you're controversial. And I'm like, isn't that what sells books?
Yes.
Like, duh. So I'm not worried about it, because believe me, I'm not worried about it. And I know that there'll be somebody out there that will take my book on. I have a great literary agent, and people are really pushing to get my voice out there. Very big people. So I don't necessarily think that it won't get published. I think it's just going to be interesting who will publish it. Yeah. So yeah, and it's it's my life story, which you will never believe. You'll be like, this didn't happen. No, did this happen? That didn't happen. Like, it's crazy.
Unique life.
And again, this is why we should really respect our elders, because they've been there. You guys you've had these crazy experiences. You've been through things that most people won't be able to understand. No. And so they should just listen, like just passively absorb it. And form your own thoughts about it, but at least be willing to hear somebody out and see where they're coming from,
without reacting emotionally, without having a temper tantrum.
I don't understand why they push back on me. I really don't, because I have a different opinion. I'm like, you guys, I grew up in a different space, and I see things differently. I see things. I'm not against the trans community. I'm actually for the trans community. I've fought for rights. I've gone all over the world and actually helped to change laws across the world. It's not that, and that's not what. They're seeing something else. They're seeing that I don't get in lockstep with them, right? They're seeing that I'm not going to say the same things they're saying. And for some reason, to them, that's against them.
Well, so, the radical types very much want everyone to not only use the proper pronouns and all of this stuff, they actually want us to, in our minds, see them as exactly the sex that they are identifying and trying to appear as. And that's what it comes down to when you just openly state, I'm a biological female, and they don't like that. They hate it.
They hate it. They say, are you detransitioning? I said, why? Because I'm talking about my actual real experience, which you're always talking about lived experience. That's they say things that they don't follow through. Diverse and inclusion. Bullshit.
They're lying.
They're lying. They're lying.
They lie my favorite phrase is they lie all the time about everything.
It's so true.
You can hear the disingenuity in their voice. as soon as they start mocking, as soon as they throw a label out there, it's just
That's right.
such a dishonest vibe. You're like, okay, you're either really dishonest or you're really immature.
Both. Touch a little bit on J.K. Rowling. Same thing. They went. It's a witch hunt. So I refuse to be a part of that. She did not say anything. And also, I'm a biological female. I fought for female rights for pretty much half my life, and still do. So I'm not going to get on board with a bunch of weird ass people because they're trans who are trying to take away women's rights, because they are. And trans women are not women. Hear me out. Trans women are not women. They are trans women. Deal with it. You're a biological man who wants to be a woman. Okay, excellent. Do it. At least look like one, and at least try to participate in the situation. No wonder people misgender you. You have a fucking beard and you're slinging your wiener around. Dude, that's not a lady. That's something else. So it pisses me off, you guys, because it's like we work hard to pass, and then they got a passing privilege. This is not a privilege. I work hard to look on this way and to be this way. And it's like, this new generation, which I even hate saying that, they're not trans. They're something else. They've co-opted everything. They don't want
to like a trampa.
Yeah, I'm like, sit down.
These youngins.
That's the energy we need. Yeah. We need people to be like, no.
That's right.
BS.
That's
and
right.
Y'all are not only harming yourselves, you're harming everyone else.
That's right.
You're doing it in the name of the opposite. Just stop.
It's crazy. Well,
they're attacking gay people, and that's gross, and it's not okay. If it wasn't for gay men, I wouldn't be here, you guys. If it wasn't for gay men, gay men helped me so much in the beginning of my transition. They took me to the gym. They were so into helping me move forward in my life, and so I will always be that. I'm loyal. I'm a loyal person that way. You helped me. I will continue to be part of that space. Gay men are important. Same-sex attraction is important. We cannot be acting like it doesn't exist. Anyway, that's
what I was going to mention, because you said they're erasing women's rights, but they're also erasing same-sex attraction and same-sex attraction rights. And a lot of I see a lot of this online. I haven't encountered it in real life, but I've read stories of people who have encountered it in real life, and I see a lot of these stories on Twitter. But gay men who are being shamed by trans men for not wanting to have sex with them because they're sexual and they're not interested.
They don't want a vagina. They want a penis. Are you
exactly?
What is wrong with these guys? So
like genital preference. Like, I reduce people to their genitals. Like, we're not reducing you to your genitals. Your genitals have everything to do with sex. That's the point.
Dude.
So to be same-sex attracted is to have the attraction to the same genitals.
Dude, I dealt with that early in my porn, and I did gay man porn, whatever you want to call it. I had a lot of admirers of gay men, but I never tricked them, and I never expected them. And I had a lot of guys who would show up and be like, I can't do this. I'm like, right on, dude. Let's, I get it. You're seeing a vagina. You're not seeing, you're hardwired.
Who could do it were probably bisexual.
That's right. They were. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. Never did I force myself on any guy. And that's why dudes were so cool with me. You know what I mean? It's like, stop doing that. These trans guys are insane. They're actually insane.
Yeah. And the trans women too are even more insane.
Oh God, dude. I mean, don't get me started.
Pressure lesbians and having sex with them when it's the same thing. Lesbians have no interest in
that's right.
penis, and also if you have a vagina, that's not a real vagina. That they're not interested in that.
They don't want you. Like, get over it. And maybe you're fucking ugly and you need to shave your beard off. And then
Buck, thank you so much for joining us.
Right on.
We do appreciate your voice in all of this, and it's an important one. I think your perspective really, really is making an impact. People are paying attention, and because of your life experiences and the things that you've gone through, it holds weight. The things that you talk about. So we're glad to have you in the conversation. We're very happy that you're speaking out and protecting kids and all that stuff. We think it's awesome.
You guys are awesome.
Thanks for chatting with us and sharing some of your insights and your life story. Remind everyone where they can find you online.
Oh, so Buck Angel everywhere, like literally Twitter. Watch out for Twitter and Instagram and whatever else. And there's my website, and I'm easily accessible. Honestly, if anyone's struggling with a kid or anything like that, please reach out to me. I really do answer everybody. I'll get to you. So it means a lot to me that you have me on the show, you guys. Thank you so much.
Appreciate your time and you talking to us. Everyone, thank you for watching. Remember, like, comment, share, subscribe,
follow Buck,
donate, help us do this, and follow Buck and support Buck's work. And thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.